We want to get to this segment about manatee deaths, and we've seen that they've recorded the highest numbers in Northeast Florida this past year alone, more than we've seen in years past. So, how can we protect manatees from harm? We have two people joining us this morning who are spearheading these efforts. John November, Executive Director and General Counsel for the Public Trust for Conservation. Welcome back to the show, John.
Thank you.
And Gerry Pinto, research scientist with Jacksonville University's Marine Science Research Institute. Dr. Pinto, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
So, John, let me start with you. Manatees have long been a cherished and protected species here in Florida, but in recent years, they've seen high mortality rates, 34 deaths reported here in Northeast Florida in this year alone, and 557 deaths statewide. Explain exactly what's going on with the manatee population in Florida right now.
Well, a lot of people don't know that we only have about 10,000 manatees in this state altogether.
Wow.
And we've had an opportunity to come together as a community and protect our neighbor, the manatee. And by striking a balance between maritime commerce and conservation interests, we're really confident that we are going to be able to come together and bounce back from some of the tragedies that we've seen with lost manatee lives in the recent years. But there's optimism for the future, certainly, that the manatee are going to continue to rebound, especially if we can provide them the helping hand they deserve.
So we've seen that there's been 85 deaths that were from watercrafts alone. Explain what's happening to the manatee population right now in Florida. Why are we seeing these type of numbers?
Well, there's a lot of boating in Florida, and the manatees, unfortunately, sometimes lose their seagrass habitat that's sometimes outside of the main channel. And when they venture into the main channel, sometimes there are conflicts with vessels. And so it is a combination of recreational vessels and commercial vessels. But, thankfully, we haven't experienced something called an unusual mortality event this year, which was even greater mortality was happening in 2019, 2020. But we've bounced out of that now, and we're ready to really rebound as a community and as a state to continue to protect the manatee.
What is the Public Trust for Conservation, and what's its role in addressing the manatee deaths?
Well, we really want to be proactive about protecting our waters, our conservation lands, and our wildlife. And there's no more charismatic and special animal in our community than the Florida manatee. And the opportunity to be proactive and really try to take some positive steps, not just to reduce the number of vessel strikes, but also to create great habitat for the manatees moving forward. They're very dependent on seagrass health. And if we can take steps as a community to identify where in our changing world and our changing river we can have the most success in restoring habitat for the manatee, we really think that that could give them the step forward they need to keep on calling Jacksonville, Florida home for centuries to come. They're ancient marine mammals. They've been here for a long time. We want them to stay here for a long time and be happy and healthy.
Now, recently, your group secured $75,000, a challenge grant to begin process of developing more protections. Why is securing this funding important now rather than in previous years?
Well, thanks to the Dolores Bar Weaver Legacy Fund, we've been able to secure a $75,000 challenge grant, and now the rest of the community gets to step up to the plate and help us try to match that to pay for our full budget to put together a white paper and educational materials. So when captains come into our port, a lot of them are international and they don't have a lot of experience knowing where the manatees are and how we can protect them to the greatest extent possible. And it's been truly inspiring because the maritime commerce community has stepped up to the plate and figured out, hey, what can we do? What are the best practices we can do? How can we improve our communications? How can we identify where these manatees are and take steps forward to protect them to the greatest extent practical? So this funding will allow us to ensure that we're not leaving any stone unturned, ensuring what we can do to make incremental change to protect these manatees.
And Dr. Pinto, I want to ask you, you've been conducting research to help with this initiative. Can you tell us what they're doing and what they're seeing in terms of that research?
Well, initially we started, this is a process that started 30 years ago. The Manatee Protection Plan was put together. We did the research. This is Jacksonville University. Collected data where the manatees were, where their food supplies were, where they were getting killed, the nature of boating traffic, the compliance of boaters with speed zones, things like that. All this was put together and looked at for many years. And so we have this plan that's mostly directed towards recreational boating. We have 26 to 28,000 boats in our area. The side that's not addressed as much is the commercial side. It is addressed on a case-by-case basis, but we thought that we could do better. And we're always trying to improve the plan and protect manatees. And we think that by looking at some of these alternative technologies, things like drones and acoustics and listening for sound, we can improve the communication about where these animals are at particular times, and then we can relay that through organizations like the Harbor Safety Committee to the commercial world that operate these large vessels and hopefully protect manatees further.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that technology, the drone technology and sound technology? Exactly how is it being used and how is it helpful?
Well, with the sound technology, we don't, there's a lot of sound, natural sound in the estuary as it is, but we call that biological noise. On top of that, you have a lot of vessel noise and dredging and all kinds of marine activities that add a lot of noise to the soundscape. So what we'd like to do is determine what the soundscape of the estuary is. And so we have these hydrophone recorders that will record sound, and we'll record them at different depths, at different places, starting at Mayport and going all the way down to probably the Buckman Bridge, Mandarin sort of area, to get an idea of how much noise there's in the estuary and what's the nature of that noise. And if we can hear manatees and dolphins and other wildlife in the area, we can use that as a proxy to presence or absence of these animals in an area, even though we may not be able to see them.
Yeah, and can you explain why the manatees like these parts of the river and they're so often crowded by these commercial ships in those areas?
Well, manatees have been in Florida for millions of years, and so they've always used the river. And as vegetarians, they like to eat the vegetation that grows in the river. The river's been altered for the last 250 years. I mean, we've dredged it, we've changed its direction, we've done a lot of things to it. Yet the manatees still prevail and come through in their yearly migration up here towards their food resources. And so they've always done it because that's what they do, and they know where the food resources are, and they know where the springs are, and those kinds of things. They've just had to contend with boating traffic as well as that now, and hopefully our speed zones will help to protect them for the most part.
But the boats don't keep them away. They still come back to those same areas.
Yes, the boats don't prevent them from coming up here. No.
Let me ask you the response from the shipping industry. Are they receptive to the data? Are they receptive to your suggestions? Are they working hand in hand with you?
For the most part, yes, and they've always been receptive. The port, in the 90s, we had a lot of manatee deaths that occurred from crushings, and the port responded by creating these cantilever docks and using these big Yokohama bumpers to create separation between the dock and the ships when they docked, and that problem sort of went away. More recently, we're trying to improve the plan so that we can address very rare events. And some of these rare events are like you might have a mating herd that's oblivious to everything else going on around them, but they end up being in the channel. And in the channel, when a large ship is traveling in the channel, it cannot stop on a dime. So being able to relay that information to ships ahead of time may be a way to help avoid manatee deaths that could occur that way.
John, I want to ask you, how is this initiative different from what the city of Jacksonville's efforts have been to protect manatees? Are you working hand in hand, or is there something different that you guys are doing?
The city's been a great partner so far on the project, absolutely. But their focus primarily in the past was recreational boating. And there has been a lot of positive momentum created to reduce the number of vessel strikes caused by recreational boats in the future. But unfortunately, the subject of commercial vessels was largely unstudied in past manatee protection plans. We want to change that. Now, I got to make clear, this is not easy. This is a challenge that's difficult because the manatees are so hard to spot in our waters. We have darker waters here in Northeast Florida. And so there are opportunities to use new technologies. This is 2025. AI, opportunities to use satellite surveillance and other high-tech audio and visual detection devices can truly make a difference. And so we're trying to understand where we are now using the beneficial technologies that are out there to truly make a difference. So it hasn't been covered with this level of detail or this level of care to determine what can be done to reduce these strikes. And I think even more excitingly is creating habitat in the future for these manatees. Science gets better and better over time. We have greater challenges over time. Our river's getting saltier. The dredging has changed the nature of the river. How can we adapt? How can we create a food source for these manatees as they're traveling back and forth between our port and the springs, to give them a stop on the St. Johns River Highway and have a great rest stop here and have some food that they can eat? And a lot of manatees stay here year round. So how can we ensure that they're healthy? That's the excitement of the project so far.
And you talked about technology. Expand a little bit on how AI could be used to assist you guys.
University of Florida researchers are actually using AI to take satellite imagery and be able to pick out where the manatees are. So right now we've been dependent on aerial surveillance. Dr. Pinto has spent decades going throughout the river to identify where the manatees are and where they're not. The capacity to actually use AI to automatically, in a split second, be able to digest a lot of information is a key possible improvement moving into the future. And something that also is kind of exciting is kind of trying to complement the aerial surveillance that Gerry does from airplanes with drones that will allow us to get a better idea, especially in targeted areas where the manatee activity is, where the seagrass habitat is, and how we can balance those two to create great places for them to live and also safe transport for our commercial maritime industry.
You've been quoted as saying protecting manatees protects the river itself. What do you mean when you say that?
They are such an integral part, our wildlife, of our community. If we can't step up and protect our wildlife, that's a reflection on us as a community. If we can have a healthy river, we can have a healthy community, we can have a healthy society. And I believe that the St. Johns River is our greatest asset as a community, and the manatee, along with the dolphins and the right whale and some of our other key species, are a reflection of who we are as a community and a society, and we can do better. We shouldn't put out the white flag just because things are changing. We're losing habitat at rapid speed. We can respond. I believe in Jacksonville. I believe in protecting the manatee.
Dr. Pinto, are there any specific examples of manatee vessel collisions in Northeast Florida that jump out at you that were particularly disturbing?
Well, I think any time a manatee is killed, people are concerned about that. We've had the thing that we really care the most about is, can we not hit them with boats and avoid the boat strikes? And so far in the last few years, we've actually had low numbers of vessel mortalities in Duval County. This year we've had one so far. Last year and the year before we had close to one or two, or low numbers. In the past, that number has been a lot higher at times, and we've had to do things to try to address why is that happening. And the nice thing about the Manatee Plan and the working with the maritime community is we can get together and we can evaluate what's going on. The law enforcement component is also very important in these plans in making them successful. And we went from, in the 90s, 2 officers on the water to now 8 on the water, and an additional police station basically near Ready Point. So that's helped a lot as well. I think the main thing is we're trying to get more data about the interaction between manatees and commercial vessels. In the past, we've always had a lot of information about recreational boating, but not so much on the commercial vessels. One of the benefits of the shipping channels is that these big vessels stay in the channel. And that in itself is good for manatee protection, because the manatees don't tend to stay in the shipping channels. But occasionally they will get in the channel, and it's those instances that we want to try to catch and communicate that to whoever needs to know that information.
And one of those cases that stands out, in May of 2023, 4 manatee carcasses were found not far from the port. And you kind of touched on this before. Investigators determined that they were part of a mating herd and were killed by a large watercraft's propeller. What are some of the changes that you've made since then to kind of prevent those type of mass deaths of manatees?
Well, those deaths tend to occur very infrequently. In fact, that type of incident is quite infrequent. But we found that we have a lot of foreign vessels that come into our port. Those vessel operators are not necessarily cognizant of our needs and our issues here with manatees.
Right.
And so we have produced, together with the port, a port placard in the past that identified that information to them and could be given to them. We want to expand on those initiatives now again, and make sure that the communication is very good and that there are protocols in place that have not really existed in the past that much.
John, let's talk a little bit about the Florida Department of Health. They issued a health advisory in June warning of excessive algae blooms in the St. Johns River. How much would it cost to clean up the St. Johns? And also, what kind of help are you getting on the state level?
Nutrient pollution is a massive, probably the greatest issue facing our state right now in terms of water quality. And thankfully, there are opportunities to reduce that through comprehensive planning, through adoption of basin management action plans. And right now, we are actually going through a process of trying to reduce the amount of nutrients and pollution entering the system. Thankfully, the state has stepped up and continued to develop these plans, but we need to do more. We need to catch all the different sources of pollution that are entering our system, because when there is algal blooms, they tend to outcompete the native vegetation, the native seagrasses, and the manatees can't eat the algae. They need those seagrasses to be robust in order to survive and move towards the future. So,
And this is a $1 billion type of fix. I mean, this is not cheap to try to address this issue.
no, I agree. It's just the impacts of biosolids pollution coming up from Central Florida and going up the river. That alone is going to cause $1 billion cleanup. But thankfully, there are incremental steps that can be made. The dream is to restore the St. Johns River to how it was when I talked to my folks, my grandparents' age. They talk about how you could look down and see seagrass. That's not impossible. We have an opportunity to be adaptive, plant the type of vegetation that could be resilient. Obviously, it's a big challenge. Hurricanes come, there's disruptions in the system. But boy, if we can make this happen, it would make a big difference for Jacksonville.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the $75,000 match funding to complete the project scope. So the goal is $150,000 in funding. What is the intention of this funding, and do you think it's possible to get the match that you need?
I do. I feel confident that this program today on First Coast Connect, being such a great voice, getting the word out to the community, can really help. And it's an incredible opportunity to fund the work of scientists like Dr. Pinto at the Marine Science Research Institute, and also hiring the other consultants and maritime commerce experts that can help us come together and strike that balance between conservation and commerce. We can do it. And frankly, we live in Jacksonville, Florida. If it doesn't fly and continue to support the maritime commerce industry, we're not going to be able to reach that goal from a conservation perspective. And it's been really cool to see the maritime commerce community who love manatees and they love boats. How do we strike that balance?
And what's the response that you're getting from the community when you talk about the issue of manatees? Because right now there are a lot of issues that take priority, and when you talk about environmental issues, sometimes it's hard to get people's attention. How do you do that?
Well, yeah, less than 1% of all the giving in the state of Florida is for environmental causes. But thankfully, there's some people who have had those unique, almost spiritual experiences where they felt the power of the Florida manatee. And when you've had that experience and known and looked at them in the eye and know that they need our help, that moment, I think, can inspire people to step up to the plate and protect the manatee. It's such an important thing to do. And if you're interested in supporting the cause, you can go to publictrustlaw.org to donate. We need the community to step up to the plate.
John, you're so passionate about this. You can hear it when you talk about it. What kind of keeps you up at night when you think about the manatee population here in Florida? I mean, you have young kids, you're thinking about their future. What keeps you up at night?
Just that it's not easy. Well, the quest we're embarking on is going to take really concerted effort, and it's going to be something we're likely going to be working on for the rest of my life. This is not something that we can just begin and then let go. Supporting the MSRI, who are been the community's leaders on manatee related issues is something that I'm hoping to do for a long time, and collaborating the business community, the contractors out there who want to do restoration with the scientists, with the maritime commerce community, that super team can make all the difference. So it's not going to be easy, but we can do it.
And Dr. Pinto, at the university level, are you seeing a lot of interest from students who are coming up and want to be part of this? Is this something that they are showing a lot of interest in as well?
I think young people in general are very worried about climate change and how it affects manatees and dolphins and all other kinds of wildlife, and our issues going forward, the pressures on our natural resources that are going to massively increase. They're concerned about that. They're worried about that. And so, yes, they're always interested in protecting manatees and wanting to know how to get involved. And thankfully, we have great teams with the state lab that's at the zoo. The work they do, their teams recovering, assisting, releasing, animals. We work with them. Our students work with them. There's always tremendous interest. Yes.
And what about you? Do you see a lot of potential with the changes you're making? Do you feel hopeful?
Well, if you asked me this back in the day when we were starting the manatee protection planning process, Dr. Quinton White was instrumental in getting that off the ground. We thought manatees would be extinct within our lifetimes, and the amount of regulation in terms of speed zones and effort that's been put in statewide to protect the manatees actually made a big difference. And I think it's really helped. And so that's a success story, I think, in itself. But as John said, this is something that you can't let get cold. You have to keep working at it because if you take your foot off the gas, things can revert.
And you need the entire community vested. So thank you again for the work you're doing, John November and Dr. Gerry Pinto. Thanks so much for being here.